about it, like there's people who are therapists like myself. So do you think that we would have to go through every single situation in order to advise somebody in the right way?
I think you would help. Be back at it again.
Hey everyone. Hey
I'm
y'all.
about to say. What was that?
It is Destiny and my husband Terry and our co-host London Dior in the stroller yet again.
At least you can see the stroller now.
Yeah, you can see the stroller a little bit.
Yeah, last video you saying co-host and you can't even see her.
Yeah.
I don't even think you can hear her. She
Yeah,
looks annoyed right now.
She last time she was asleep before we got started, but this time she is wide awake. So we'll see how this goes. But I feel like this is real life, and I wanted to capture like real life because a lot of times we have put off the podcast because like our kids are awake, our kids are doing this, our kids are doing that. So we're like, let's just bring the kid. I mean,
or reschedule.
Yeah, we always reschedule and it never gets done.
So it's either early in the morning or super late at night.
But now that I'm working out early, it's like, yeah, there's no way to add anything extra. So, how was your week?
Didn't we just do the video? My week is still going just as
They don't know we just did the video. I'm not going to post it till like
okay.
I'm posting the video every week, so you better come up with something.
So guess what? I still had the same week I had the other week for your other video.
No, this is a new week.
Is it a new week?
Today's Monday.
When did we do the last video? Saturday? Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. My bad. My week is good. It's Labor Day. I haven't done anything.
Okay. My week is okay so far. I can't complain. Nothing too crazy happening just yet. We get our twins will be back tomorrow.
Yep, they've been at their grandparents for about 3-4 days now.
What I think is interesting too about this is like nobody takes London right now because I won't let them because I feel like she's still a little too young. But I think I'm sure she would be, but I'm just not ready yet. But I think that it's interesting because it's like we never got to see what it was like to have just one kid because we started off with twins. And so I feel like this is like our experience with one kid.
Yeah, no, definitely is.
Having multiple kids at this point when we get to experience the one kid is a breeze. It's like totally different. You can't even like compare. But I think that I don't want to take anything away from anybody else because I feel like somebody who's like a triplet mom probably thinks having twins is a breeze, you know?
Yeah. Well, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, she really wasn't getting any sleep.
Yeah.
Because even if she had a husband, as soon as they get the 2 kids fed, she still has to feed that third kid.
To think, can you imagine triplets? Oh my goodness. Twins was rough.
Imagine if you breastfeeding them.
Oh my God. Yeah, no.
Maybe that's what you do. Well, but I didn't. 2 and then give the one formula and then just put them in rotation?
I guess so. That's a lot of work. I would definitely pump. But with the twins, I feel like I had enough milk for...
Yeah, but I'm saying, what would you do? Because you can't feed all 3 of them at the same time. You know how, like, it's the consistent feed.
No.
It's only one of you.
I'm sure a lot of triplets are probably formula fed for that reason.
We should ask somebody that had triplets.
We should. Oh, I've got a friend that had triplets.
Yeah,
we should ask her. But, no, if you could breastfeed 3 at a time, like at the same time, props to you, because, it's a no for me. 1,000%. But yeah, I think this is cool because we get at least a little glimpse of what it's like to have one kid, which we never got. And so it gives us a little bit of a break because even though we still have a kid with us, I think it's still a little break.
Yes, definitely easier to say the least. Yeah. You don't have to really worry about after she goes to sleep, she's good to go. You don't have to worry about anybody messing with her, making her not go to sleep.
And the twins with their energy and stuff too. They got so much energy.
She has energy too, but
on a different level.
Yeah, well, because they're older.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they just vibe off each other.
Yeah.
That's the other thing too.
Yeah. All right, y'all. So, as promised, today we are going to talk about, can somebody single give you advice as you are married? So if you're married, would you take advice from a single person?
Okay.
What are your thoughts?
Seeing how many you only guessed one here.
For now, we're just getting started. Oh, London thought that was funny.
Sorry, London.
Was that funny, girl?
Yeah. Thank you, London. All right, your question was, do you feel a single person can give advice to a married couple? In what aspect?
Just any way you want to answer it.
Well, it's different because if you're talking about like marital stuff, then no. Yeah, because how would they know? Unless they get married before.
That's what I'm talking about. Could a single person give you advice on marriage?
Yeah, well, but could a single person give you advice on how to be married and how to work out?
Okay. However you want to answer the question.
Yeah, but I'm just saying there's different ways, but I know what you mean. I don't think so. I personally don't think so. Because you don't know everything that's entailed in a marriage. You think you do because of the things you read or the things you see, or you might have seen your parents, but you truly don't know what it's like being married. You don't know what it's like to have to wake up next to the same person day in, day out. You're free to do whatever you want. You really don't have to take the other person's ideas into consideration. Mm-hmm. So I don't think so. Unless that person's been married before and they're single now because of divorce or they're widowed, however that is. But if you've never been married before, it's hard to give someone advice on how they should run their marriage or how they should. You agree with me, London?
I don't know if they even gonna be able to hear this podcast because this girl is doing some talking. Lord,
yeah, it should be fine.
Okay.
But you said something different the other day. You said you feel like somebody else should be able to give advice, and I don't know how.
Well, I think there's. So I agree with you, but I disagree. I agree that when you're married, I feel like if I was single or when I was single, giving somebody advice who is married, I don't feel like I would have understood exactly what being married entailed. I think you can have an idea and you can think you know, but until kind of like parenting, I mean, you can see that parenting looks difficult, but you don't really know to what extreme until you're into it. So, but on the other hand, I feel like when somebody is single, I think that, or really anybody, I feel like if you were to go to somebody, let's just say single because that's the scenario, and explain to them like an issue that you're having with, I don't know, just like say communication with your spouse, I do think that somebody single, or just really anybody, but somebody single for this example, could listen to it and take themselves out of it. So like, when you and I have an issue, I'm going to think about my perspective because I'm in the marriage and my emotions are into the marriage, you know, but somebody single is not involved in the marriage. So I think that they would be able to look at the problem in like a black and white scenario if it's something like communication. So if it was something like my husband's getting on my nerves because he never takes the trash out on time or something, I think that somebody single could be like,
your husband gets on your nerves because you don't take the trash out on time?
Because he never takes the trash out on time.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. So I think that something like that, I feel like they can help you navigate, okay, well, maybe y'all could take turns. Or, you know, I don't think all married problems require somebody married to solve them, is what I'm trying to say, to simplify it.
I don't think
to an extent, though.
I don't think that was what the question was.
What?
The question was, can single people give advice on a marriage?
I think that you can, depending on the problem, is my answer. I think that a single person can, depending on the problem.
What problem?
Depending on whatever problem that you have. I don't think that I would take advice from somebody single if I was like on the verge of divorcing my spouse or anything that's more like serious like that. I feel like I would need advice about that from like another married person, so they can understand exactly what that means.
Okay.
But I feel like some other problems regarding like communication, say I'm in the wrong for a specific situation, I feel like somebody single can tell me I'm in the wrong. You know, I don't think they necessarily have to be married to tell me.
Yeah, but I don't think that's necessarily, is that considered advice though?
Yeah. If I'm talking to them about a situation, if I'm telling them like, hey, I'm trying to think of something that's like legit that we would go through.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think of a real scenario and that's not something like, hey, you know how sometimes I was thinking just off the top of my head, maybe they could, you know, tell you about like date night spots that they take in my scenario would be they take their girlfriends to or whatnot.
I have a scenario that's real life. I feel like for me, how you know how like every time it's time to go somewhere that I like to do, you kind of act like you don't really want to go.
Uh-huh.
So I feel like somebody single can kind of talk to me about, I don't know, being more patient with you, even though I'm like annoyed in the situation.
Yeah, but
I don't think you have to be married to give me advice on that situation. Like if you're
okay, I think we're mixing up. I'm not. So I know when we're saying married, but are we? I'm not saying people in a. I'm not saying I'm including people in a relationship as well into this conversation.
Right, you're single till you're married.
Yeah. Okay, but I think you're mixing the two. I think you're saying that you could be single in a relationship and then get the advice from those people. Well, yeah, of course. I acknowledge that as well. I'm talking about somebody that's been single, just purely single, nothing. How are they going to give you advice?
Huh?
Somebody that hasn't been in a relationship.
What do you? I feel like we should start this all over. I feel like it's too much going on. I feel like I can't concentrate because London's over here.
Well, you better figure it out because this thing recorded, so you better figure it out.
I think we should start all over.
No. Keep going.
Terry, I think we should start all over.
No, we ain't starting
this
over.
baby's over here doing the most. I can't even focus on what we're even talking about.
Say, well, bring it over here.
Okay. Is that funny? I feel like anybody who is single, the definition of single, in my opinion, is somebody who is not married. Whether you're in a relationship for 10 years, not in a relationship for 10 years, not in a relationship at all. If you're not married by law, you are single.
Well, that changes my answer then. If that's what the criteria is, then yes, single people give married people advice then.
Okay.
Yeah, if that's going to be the criteria, then yes. Okay,
but you're saying somebody who's single who's not dating anybody.
I'm talking about somebody that hasn't been in a relationship, not necessarily even dated somebody. Mm-hmm. Somebody that hasn't been in a long-term relationship. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be able to give you advice on what it's like to be married, be in a relationship, because some people been in a relationship so long, it's sort of like they've been married before.
That's a whole nother topic in itself.
Yeah, I know it's a whole other topic, but they've been in a relationship that long, so
right.
I'm not going to say they can't give me marriage advice. It was like,
I don't feel like, me personally, I don't feel like somebody who's like, you're talking about like a common law marriage.
Okay, yeah, if we want to put technical terms to it, yeah. I'm like, what?
I don't feel like you could give me marriage advice because I feel like a common law
for 5 years, hasn't been with anybody else, done anything else, but been with this same person for 5 years, lives with this person, and
I don't feel like that's the same as being married. That's just me personally.
Why? But explain, why is that not the same?
Well, for one, when you're married, everything is tied together. I can't just up and be like, hey, I'm out. Like, there would have to be like a whole, we got kids, we got a house. Okay, but they might have I have your last name. There's a lot more to it than.
Same last name too. I don't know.
Okay, dude. Now you're reaching.
I'm reaching on that. But they might have kids. They might have kids. They might have assets tied together as well. So
I just don't feel like it's. Well, for one, this is a covenant with God. I feel like number one, but number two, I feel like I just feel like when you're in a relationship, even if you have kids, kids, that's a whole nother situation. But you can still kind of walk away. Like, yeah, you're tied to that relationship for the kid. But I think it would be different, like versus you and I, if we got divorced, number one, I'd be divorced. Number two, we'd have to do like joint custody or something, some sort of situation. And then number three, everything that we have, we'd have to split. Mm. Versus if you're in a relationship, it's kind of like, I'm out, bye. Like, it's not...
Yeah, that's not necessarily true, depending on.
Well, if you have a house, then you'd have to figure out a situation for the house or whatever.
Yeah, or if you have kids, you still have to figure out a situation there. There's other aspects to it. That's why I said it's not. I feel like the criteria changed on us.
Well, I think that you have a situation if you're not married and you've been living with somebody for 5 years. Yes, I agree that is complicated, but I don't think it's the same as being married.
Okay, so.
Because also, too, if I'm in a relationship with somebody, which I would never be in a relationship with nobody for 5 years, having no kids and living together without being married. That's just me. But I feel like it's just not the same. I feel like if I ever was to think about leaving this marriage, I would have to consult God about it. I would really have to do some therapy about it. there would be like a lot more into it that I would have to really, really, really put some thought into.
But that's not for everybody does. I know your thought process, but that's not how everybody's thinking. Some people, they get married.
That's the problem with the world. That's why the divorce rate is so high.
I know, exactly, but they get divorced. So, and I'm saying somebody that's in a relationship, they could view it as, okay, we stay in this relationship, and if we want to split, all right, we split, we're good to go. And say marriage, now we have the paperwork behind us, and now it starts to get, people start to get spiteful, becomes a lot of paperwork. I don't know. So somebody that is in a relationship, I do believe they can give advice to somebody that's married. Mm-hmm. They might not understand how to necessarily go through the process of getting married per se, mm-hmm. but depending on how long they've been together, I think they understand the basis of what it is to live with somebody, how it is to function with that person daily. Because some people don't get married and they might live together for 20, 30 plus years. That's some people's reality. I don't know why we're acting like it's not. It's some people's reality.
But I'm not answering the question for other people. I'm answering for myself. So that's why I'm like,
But I feel like we have to take into account everything. We can't just take into account.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. But I guess for me too, is something I just thought about too, as even if you're married, single, whatever your status is, I'm not going to take advice from anybody who does not prioritize God and who's not going to give me godly advice.
Yeah, because I was going to say there's probably some married people that you wouldn't want to take advice from.
Exactly. So if I don't have similar morals, if we both don't view God the same and prioritize God, then I don't want any advice, whether you're single, married, whatever your status is. It's a no for me, because I just think that when you're married, it's a covenant for God, before God, and I think that you can't just walk away from it. Now, I know this generation just be walking away from anything, but I just feel like for me specifically.
Okay, and I understand that. Mm-hmm. I'm not even acting like I don't understand that. I understand that. Right. I am saying just from an advice perspective, because not necessarily everybody, you don't necessarily have to believe in God to get good advice from people. Because people that don't believe in God still give, in a sense, we'll say godly advice. Like the principles could still be there and they not believe in God. So that's what I'm saying. People that are in relationship, they can still give advice to married people. That's why I said purely the people that are single, that have not been in a relationship, those are the people that I'm saying cannot give advice to married people, because they do not understand what it is to be with another person constantly. They might date other people, and we'll say they could date 5, 6, 7, 8 people. Mm-hmm. But they don't know what it is to be with one person for years on end. So that's why I'm choosing my answer.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that. I still disagree. I still think that sometimes you can listen to a problem and not necessarily experience that exact situation, but still can give you decent advice. I think it just depends on the level of what you need. That would be
like you giving me advice on basketball based off what you saw.
I don't fully understand basketball enough to give advice on it.
That's what I'm saying about a single person.
Well, but I think
understand.
I don't know. I think basketball is more technical. I think I don't know. I feel like relationship is very broad. Like your relationship with your sibling, your relationship with your parents, your relationship with. I don't feel like it's the same as giving marriage.
We're talking about married people. We're not talking about.
Okay, so let's do this then. So do you think that, because if you think about it, like there's people who are therapists like myself. Mm-hmm. So do you think that we would have to go through every single situation in order to advise somebody in the right way?
I think it would help if you did go through a lot of different situations.
Okay, it would help, but is it a requirement?
I feel like it should be.
So you think that I need to be a drug addict to be a drug counselor?
That's not what I said. I said you need to go through that situation. So you need to know, have talked to other people who have been drug addicts, who have told you their story. So when a situation arises, then you know how to approach the situation.
So with that same example, if I'm single and I ain't never dated nobody and I'm have married friends.
Okay, no, we just added another scenario into it, but at the same time.
Because that's exactly what you just said.
But my thing is, I'm still not taking, I'm not taking advice from you.
So if you were a drug addict and I was your therapist and I hadn't done drugs.
Okay, so.
You wouldn't take advice from me.
Let me put it like this. If I was a drug addict and I have a choice between you being my therapist who has never experienced a drug or somebody who has conquered being a drug addict before and able to tell me the ropes of what it takes to get through it, I'm choosing the person who's been through it before because they understand my situation and understand what it takes to truly go through the withdrawals, basically the hurt, the pain that I'm going through on the inside. You don't. No matter how many books you read, no matter how many stories you've heard, you truly don't know. Right. You've never been through this situation before. So some people will take the advice, of course, just because you're a licensed therapist and whatnot. But in my scenario, I would prefer somebody who's lived it and been through it. Now, am I telling therapists to become drug addicts? No, because that's dumb.
Because that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that's who I feel like I would prefer that as somebody, if I'm a drug addict. Think about it. People, when you listen to information and listen to advice, not necessarily, let's take off marriage aspect, just in life, usually you look for people that are similar to your background. You look for people that look like you a lot of times. You look at people who can relate to your situation. Right. I would say somebody that can't relate to your situation, you're like, cool, appreciate you telling me that story, but you don't know what it's like to be me. Yeah. And because you never experienced that. You don't know where I'm from. You don't know how hard it is to be in my scenario. Yeah. So
I mean, I get it, but I don't get it. I get it to some extent. I still feel like I would, depending on what the advice is, I may or may not take it. Just depending on what the advice is, because I just feel like sometimes people have good insight. They don't necessarily have to be in the same situation. I do agree that with certain situations, and I guess it just depends, it's situation based. With certain situations, I feel like it would make me feel better if you know exactly what I've gone through. But I don't think I need that relatability for every situation that I go through. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like, that makes sense, but not every,
I'm sorry. Every marital issue, I don't think I necessarily need anybody to be in my exact situation or have my exact circumstances in order to give me sound advice.
And I think we're talking I'm assuming we're talking about more the deeper issues. We're not talking about like simple things, right? Because because if it's like simple things like what to do on date nights, I'm pretty sure anybody could, look it up online and figure that out.
I was thinking more of like a communication aspect.
Yeah, but I feel like
communicate. Yeah, communication. But I don't. Me personally, I just don't feel like, and I guess because this is the therapist in me, I don't necessarily feel like somebody who is single can't give me advice on the communication aspect of the marriage.
Think about it.
They can tell me when I'm right, when I'm wrong, or I think that they can still, because at the end of the day, they're not in the situation. They could take the scenario and they can think about it without any emotions attached to it. That's just me.
Well, think about it. People who have kids, right? They always say to somebody who's single or somebody who hasn't had kids, you don't know what it's like. You can tell me everything that I should be doing, right? But you don't know what it's like to have kids, so please, respectfully, get out my face. Right. So I attribute it to that because you honestly don't know until you have kids, like some of the difficulties and the challenges that come from it. So that I really think it's easier to hear somebody who's been through it because they can write out detailed plans and help you through the steps, rather than somebody who is Googling the steps or be like, hey, you probably should try this. You're like, well, have you done it before? Well, no, I don't have kids, but this is what you should do. Yeah, like I'm throwing that advice in the trash.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I can see both sides, honestly, because I do feel like there's a lot of people that try to give me like advice about being a parent, and I think there's levels to that too, because I also feel like you're a parent, that's cool, but are you a parent of multiples? Have you had twins before? Because how a parent a single child is different than twins. But I think some things with parenting is just logical advice. So that's why I'm kind of like, I don't necessarily think.
But like you just said, the logical advice, you would put that into a category where that applies just kid by kid basis. But when they try to tell you, hey, I have 2 kids that are close in age, that's just like having twins, which we hear all the time.
Yeah, it is not the same. Oh my God, yeah.
Because it's not the same.
At all.
But when people tell us that, it's like, okay, man, and we just roll our eyes because we know it's not the case. You have one kid that's older than the other, no matter if it's by 10 months or if it's by 2 years. You have one kid that's older than the other. Yeah. So you don't know what it's like to have to get up in the night and have to feed 2 kids. You don't know what it's like to have to worry about diapers, worrying about the vomit sometimes, and then sometimes them still not going to sleep.
Yeah.
And up until their next feed. So, and because with her, you could just, you feed her, put her down, and see right now, she's asleep right now. And if not, if it was both of them, when Terry and Tristan were younger, it would be both of us over here pushing and strolling. Yeah. So, like sometimes people don't get that. So that's why I say it depends on the scenario, but I don't think it's always going to be easier when somebody's been part of that situation. So, like for like NFL, NBA, like, you know, star players, they run camps for the kids and whatnot.
Right.
And you know the reason behind it, because you see somebody who's been in your situation, and sometimes a lot of times from their backgrounds. Yeah. Who has made it out. And those players, you know, they give their time, they give their money to, you know, bring the kids into a better situation, show them a life, sometimes in better situations than what they had experienced at home. So in doing so, these kids should listen to, of course, their professional athletes. Right. At this point. But so opposed to listening to sometimes even their parents because they look at their parents and like, okay, I understand what you're telling me, but I'm like, you've never done this before. Yeah. You don't understand the vigors of going through a practice. Yeah. I would say my body is hurting. I don't know how to recover. You're telling me, I would say just get your rest. No, that doesn't work all the time. Right. So you don't understand that. So I think actually having somebody that's been through it is always going to be better scenario than somebody who's just telling you about a situation. Yeah. In my personal opinion, that's how I see that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I can see that. I just don't, for me personally, I don't want to count anybody out, and that could be really great advice I miss out on. So I guess the next question would be, if somebody single was sitting here, say we're at like a marriage conference or something, and somebody single just so happens to be there and listen to like some of our problems, would you, before they even start talking, be like, you're not married, I don't want to hear it? Or would you just listen to it and then pick and choose?
So like I said, I would apply the scenario. If they're applying just person-to-person knowledge or advice, yeah, of course, I'm going to listen to it. Okay. But if it's something that I'm over here side-eyeing about, like, how could you possibly know this? Either I'm going to ask them, or I'm, like you said, I'm just going to be like, and then just shrug it off, because it's something I'm not going to listen to it, to be honest with you.
Okay. And I guess for me, I'm different. If it, I don't know. I just feel like depending on the situation, I would at least think about it if it sounds logical. And if it does sound logical, I would actually apply it. Not necessarily needing somebody to be married.
That'll be like me telling somebody how to swim.
But okay, so with that specific example, don't you think that you can look at somebody and say, like, hey, I might not know how to swim, but I know what you're doing ain't quite right. Like, what? I feel like I don't need to know how to. So do I need to know?
What advice could I give them? That's what I'm saying. Because I'm telling them that doesn't look right. Yeah, okay, cool. I'll say, you look like me in the water. But other than that, what could I tell them?
I feel like sometimes
that's not advice at that point. That's criticism.
Well, if it works, I mean,
it ain't gonna work because I can't tell you how to get better. I can't offer you anything to get better. I don't know how to do it.
Okay. I don't know. I just don't want to count nobody out because I feel like you just never know who has the best advice and who doesn't have the best advice.
But I'm not saying that per se. I'm saying
I get what you're saying, babe. I get what you're saying. You're saying it depends on the situation and it depends on. I think we're pretty much saying the same thing. It's situation based.
And make sure I hit my button. I'm over paranoid.
We should have hit mute when London was acting a fool, but she got herself together. But I think it's situation based, and I agree with that as well. That it's situation based, and I would at least listen to the advice and pick and choose if I want to actually apply it or not. That would be my answer. Okay.
Yeah. More likely than not, I probably wouldn't be listening to somebody who's never been in a relationship and is single. Yeah, probably not. Especially if it's advice on how to be married or like helping a marriage. Yeah.
But you said that you would take advice on somebody who's not married but living together. So it's that you met somebody who was together like 7 years and they have our exact circumstance but just not married.
Just not married.
You would still apply this.
Yes, I would. Yes, because they understand the relationship. Mm-hmm. They understand what the day-to-day is, whether it is going to work, coming back, having kids, having a family. They understand the dynamic. They might not necessarily have a ring, but they still understand. So that's why I'm like, I still take advice from them. Mm-hmm. Somebody that's single, who's never been in a relationship, who doesn't understand the fabric of like a family.
Right.
No. And I think that's why some of like you get advice from like the older people, the older generation, because they do know. They'll tell you little tidbits and whatnot if you listen to them.
Yeah.
But they usually offer good advice. Well, some of them don't. but it just I would say it's easier to listen to somebody who's been at it for a while. I would say I think that's in any profession. I would say any profession, any walk of life. Somebody who's actually been through certain experiences, it's just easier to listen to them.
Yeah. I guess for me, I would still say the same thing for somebody who is together for years and not necessarily married, because I still think the dynamic is similar, but it's different because a lot of things I do is not necessarily because I want to do it, because my flesh is telling me one thing, but I do it because of God. So I think it's still, but I think basic logical advice, I'd have to, again, listen to it and see what it sounds like and determine if I'm going to apply it or not. Okay. But I just think, for me, I feel like a single person who, again, is putting God first, I think that they would still be able to give me some sound advice that would still be...
Yeah, but my thing is, sound advice to help you in a marriage? That's what I'm asking.
I think that the advice would be, it would still be like godly advice, because at the end of the day, I'm not married just to be married. I'm married because...
But what good is just general God? I don't care if it's godly advice, worldly advice. What good is it if it doesn't help you?
Why would godly advice not help you?
I'm saying if it doesn't help me in this scenario that I'm asking...
What is going on?
If it doesn't help me in the scenario that I'm asking for... Then, like,
where did we create that from, though? I'm saying that this is something. This is actual good advice.
But I thought we were applying it back to the relationship again. Are we just talking about logical advice? If it's logical advice, then yeah, I agree with you. But if we're talking about the relationship again, what good is it going to help me?
I'm just thinking about I'm married, and
quoting from the Bible is not just going to help me if they don't know how to apply it.
But I'm not saying you're quoting from the Bible. I don't need to hear the Bible scriptures. I got that. I got the Bible in my room. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying.
Did Jesus ever talk about marriage in the Bible? I need to look at that, because I might need to change my take depending on.
Okay. I think that. For me, from what I'm reading, and I'm just starting to really, really read my Bible, because I was definitely one of those Christians. I was like, yeah, I know God, but I ain't reading none of my Bible. I just listen to what the pastor's saying. And what I'm finding is that just basing everything off of what these pastors are saying, a lot of that stuff ain't quite right. So the more and more I read the Bible, the more and more I'm like, eh. So I think in realizing how serious God is, I think the world kind of leads you to believe that he's like, oh, he'll forgive you. Oh, he'll just be, oh, it's just so great. No, God was killing people up in that Bible, and I am not trying to be one of them. So with that being said, I'm like, nah, I just need that sound advice. That is biblical advice. I don't need you to necessarily read me a scripture, but what you are telling me, if it doesn't line up with what is in that Bible, then I don't want to hear it, no matter who it's from.
But let me ask you this. So the Bible, all right, so it was written thousands of years ago. We can agree on that. Mm-hmm. But who's not to say that other advice, because the Bible was talking about scenarios years ago. Let's just put it at that point. Who's not to say that there's somebody now who's updating the Bible, not necessarily writing the words in the Bible, but updating with their words, their life, their actions. That might be just a newer version or translation. So I understand we read the Bible, and again, it's good context. It gives us historical documentation, accurate information to live by. But at the same time, it can't be the only thing. You can't do everything verbatim from it just because it's a new time.
I'm not saying that. No, I get that. I'm not saying that. Again, I don't need you to quote scriptures. But what you're saying, if it still doesn't line up with the Bible, okay. So I don't need you to.
Could you explain, or is it?
So in the Bible, it talks about how you should be selfless, pretty much, and humble in everything you do, and serving other people and not serving yourself. So with that being said, you can give me advice that is up on those couple of bullet points that I just listed, but you're not quoting me scriptures. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like you could tell me to serve my husband without saying 1 Corinthians 1:12 says, and that's not the scripture. I just threw that out there.
1 Corinthians 1:12. Don't let you get famous now. People will be like, 1 Corinthians 1:12 does not say that, ma'am.
No. I'm not saying that it does, because it definitely does not. Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, I don't need you to give me exact scripture. I need you, but what I would like is for whatever you're saying still needs to line. Yeah, it still needs to be based upon what God is saying, or what the Bible is saying, is what I'm saying. But to your point, I feel like, yes, the Bible was written years ago, but at the same time, there's a lot of different parables that's in the Bible, or different scenarios that are in the Bible, or not scenarios, but like situations that are in the Bible, or stories that are in the Bible, and they're still applied to current day life.
No, I agree.
And I think that part is helpful too, because I feel like a lot of times you're like, oh, this is written years ago, but I feel like a lot of stuff is still like, okay, I can actually, this makes sense, or I need to actually do this. Because I realized in reading the Bible that I'm a very selfish person, and not in the ways that I thought. I just didn't realize, like, that the more and more I read the Bible, the more and more I'm like, ooh, I need to work on this. I need to work on that. I need to work on this. I need to work on that. And I know God is a forgiving God, but at the same time, I heard somebody say the other day that the devil knew the Bible, and or he knew
the devil knows Jesus is Lord.
Yeah, the devil knows God, but he's not obedient to God. So do you want to be that same person? Do you want to be the person that knows what you're supposed to be doing, knows what God tells you to do, and you still ain't doing it? Mm-hmm. Because if that's the case, what makes you different? Yeah. Than the devil. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of times, like in church, they talk to you about, I remember we were at one church, I'm not going to say the pastor, but the pastor basically said, in order to get into heaven, you have to just receive Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and that's it. And it's like, okay, that's one of the steps, and that's great. And you're telling this to thousands and thousands of people, because for me, I'm thinking, okay, well, I've been accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. That's something I did years ago. Okay, cool, we good. I get into heaven. Like, no. You still have to be obedient towards God. You still need to be living a Christ-like life. And I think that's the part that's not really driven in the churches. I think that we kind of try to simplify things, and I don't think it's really that simple. But I will say that by you accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you are convicted more to do the right thing.
Well, I think the reason behind that as well, though, is because you don't want your pastors to be the one that stray people away from Christ, because that's more of a sin than anything.
Yeah.
To be the cause of people not accepting Jesus or not believing in God, I believe that is probably one of the greater sins, if I had to say so myself.
Yeah, that's what it talks about in the Bible. The teachers are going to be judged harder because they're the ones that take advantage of people's vulnerabilities.
Exactly. So my thing is, for me, because I understand the situation where you say preachers, they don't necessarily say everything up front, but there has to be a way you talk to people, because you have to draw people in, especially with the age it is now, where it's like everything they want quick in a hurry.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to get people within your community, within the church, to then explain those teachings, because everybody's not going to receive a message the same, but certain parts of it they can grasp and get a hold to. So that's why preachers probably a lot of times, just being honest, have to dumb down the message, because if they don't, you're not going to listen.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure these preachers who have studied the Bible 10, 15, 20 years, if they wanted to, they could go really drop some knowledge on you, but you wouldn't be ready to handle it.
Yeah.
So I really think that's the reason they do this now, because they kind of have to. If not, people wouldn't want to go to church, and then you would see less of attendance. Now, with some preachers, I do believe it is a money thing. And I believe that, they're like, this is a good opportunity. Hey, I can sell my books, I can do podcasts, I can do whatever, and I can do other stuff as well. And all I have to do is preach on Sunday. I'm cool, perfect, I can do that.
Yeah.
So I think for some people, it is like that. But I think for a lot of pastors, they really could go into the Bible, but my thing is, if the people don't understand, what good is it? You're saying it's like having a teacher trying to teach you calculus and you don't know algebra.
Right.
What good is it he's teaching you calculus? It does you no good. So that's why they have to start at the basics, and then you have to study yourself as well, because if you don't study, you're not going to get any better.
Right.
But then I think that's why they create the small groups, so you can go a little bit more in depth and then go from there. But I'm pretty sure, especially some preachers could really hit you with some knowledge, just stuff that you don't know about, but they can't, because they know people wouldn't receive it as well.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I think the challenge with that is that I heard that message, there was no follow-up message, and that's just what I heard. So it's like, that was the only time.
Say it again.
That I heard that message and there was no follow-up message.
Say the message. What's the message? I'm sorry.
That you just accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is I get that you got to like warm people up before you give them the real, but I also feel like maybe that should be like a series. Like maybe, okay, today we're going to talk about the series of Jesus Christ being your Lord and Savior, and maybe in the beginning you start off with, okay, first you need to accept him as your Savior, your Lord and Savior, and then we'll go into what that looks like. I just think that when you they simplify things, but I think sometimes when you simplify things that people still miss the entirety of the message. Sorry. And I think that I get what you're saying. I think that 100%. I think that sometimes if you hit people with the real, that they can't handle it. I totally agree with that. But I think that maybe if we could find either a way to do a series to where there's, I warm you up to the message. But I think when we sugarcoat it too much, which I think this world is full of nothing but sugarcoating a lot of stuff, then I don't think people are really realizing the what God is actually saying, because I feel like a lot of these messages I heard in these churches, I'm reading my Bible and I'm like, whew, God was very blunt, to the point, killing folks. I mean, it's just like really thoroughly explain the messages and not just sugarcoat it. I get it. You want to bring people to Christ, but you still have to try to figure out a way to
give them the real.
What I was going to say,
a lot of times
Let me see if I can find it.
I know, and I can talk, I guess, while you're doing that. Okay. A lot of times, so what would happen when you get saved is, you get saved, I know at my old church anyway, you get saved, take you up to the front, do the whole thing, you're saved. But they would give you a card, reach out, come to like a group, and then they would explain more to you. I remember I went to a kids' church at one time. They did something similar as well. But also, I remember Wednesday nights, it would be Tuesday, Wednesday night, you would have a Bible study. Mm-hmm. And that's when the preacher would really start to get into stuff. I feel like Sunday's message was more to bring people to the church. And Tuesday, Wednesday night Bible study is when the preacher really started getting into the Bible more. You was able to ask questions. You was able to take a little bit of a deeper dive into the Bible. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if they do that as much anymore. And the thing is, a lot of the times they don't have, I don't think they have the Bible studies anymore. And if they do, I don't hear about them.
I think they make them to like more like small groups.
Yeah, but that's not really interacting with the preacher though. I'm saying
like how like Creflo had he had the Bible studies on
I
Wednesdays.
I wasn't even talking about him, but I was, but that wasn't Creflo doing that, was he?
Doing what?
The Bible studies. I thought it was always somebody else.
Yeah, he had like another pastor.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think it was him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's not what I'm talking about either. I remember. So the pastor that I grew up with, when we had Bible studies, he would be the one actually hosting those Bible studies.
I think nowadays pastors are on the move and they're doing all kind of different things. I think a lot of times they're flying to different cities and they're doing different.
Remember how I said earlier, a lot of times, sometimes it'd be about money, podcasts, and things like that.
I don't think it's necessarily always about money, though. I think sometimes.
So why not just stay at one church then, if it's not about the money?
But is that what God told them to do? If God told you, that's what I'm saying. Like we can't. I think that people are so. I don't know. I just kind of hate when people are like. People want like the pastor to be poor. Like God ain't calling to be poor. Like I do think that there are some pastors who are really like doing the absolute most. But I think that if you have a gift, just like you have a gift in basketball, you're not going to just play basketball in New York because that's where you're from. Like if you have a talent, you're going to go to different states and stuff and use that talent. You're going to do podcasts if that's what you want to do, to educate other people or to help other kids learn how to play basketball. Excellent. So I don't think it should be different for pastors. I think a lot of times, and not necessarily what you're saying, but I think a lot of times people think that a pastor should be like, oh, only stay at your church and be broke. And the people at your church, if they need money, then that's your responsibility too. No, it's not, because everybody's broke for different reasons. Some people are broke because they don't feel like working. That's not my fault, but some people do need a helping hand. And yes, the pastor could help out, but you got to think about all the amount. If you have a church of thousands of people, how can you feed all thousands of them every single day? Like I think to some extent
some of those churches make enough money.
Some of them do, but at the same time, even if I make a whole bunch of money, you don't know what I'm doing. I could have multiple churches. I could be helping people, just not publicizing it. I mean, we really just don't know. And I think that sometimes we make a lot of assumptions, but I think that they have the right to write that book, because God probably told them to write that book. They have the right to do that podcast because God told them to do the podcast. I just don't think that we can just because a pastor is a pastor, I don't think we can say like they need to just stay at that church, because we don't know what God told them to do, and we don't know who God wants them to send another message to. Mm-hmm. No, so it's kind of like I think that that's something like that's major in the Black community. We're always like counting the dollars of the Black pastor, and I don't think that all of them are obviously doing the right thing, but I think that there are some that are, and I think that the ones that are, I feel like they should do podcasts, because that's how we get to listen to them too, not just their Sunday messages, but also them interacting with other podcasts and seeing them on other channels and stuff. And some people who don't listen to their sermons, or maybe not even go to church and stuff, maybe they'll catch a message from, I don't know, maybe Mike Todd on the mic with like Lecrae or something. I don't know. You know. So I think that this is a little bit more to it, but I do think that there are some pastors who are just looking for opportunity, and I think that that's what God was talking about. That's actually in Luke 2, when talking about the teachers and how they'll be judged and stuff, because a lot of them are trying to, well, not a lot of them, some of them are trying to like manipulate and take advantage of the vulnerable people and stuff. So yeah, I think that's the hard part. I think that's
a good point. Yeah, because that does make sense. Yeah, especially if you have a talent.
You're not going to just keep it at your church. I mean, you may go other places and just see. And I think that's a talent in general. But I think we kind of justify it for certain things. Like, it's okay to bounce a ball, but it's not okay for you to do a sermon. But just because I do a sermon and just because I write a book doesn't mean that I'm not still doing God's will for my life. You know?
No, I can agree with that. Yeah, but some people I feel...
No, some people are totally... I mean, you got to think there's pastors that sleeping with little kids. I mean, there's people that are really out of control here. So, yeah, we appreciate you listening to our podcast. It does not have a name yet, but we will come up with one eventually.
The No Name Podcast, hosted by Destiney Williams. Co-host Terry.
Later.
You must be 33. I'm just playing. I was joking.